This lecture is going to cover decision statements, conditions, and logical operators in Java. After this lecture, you will understand what decision statements are and how they are used. You will be able to program if and switch statements in Java. You will understand conditional code and conditional operators. You will also understand how to write conditions inside decision statements, and you will be able to solve problems using logical operators and linking conditions inside decision statements. Refer to the supporting links or search for Java syntax and Java buffered reader online for more information. A command that executes a block of code if one or more conditions evaluate to true is a decision statement. In Java, you will use if and switch. Here is an example of code that prints a new line for every 10 numbers. Here is a decision statement with an else. Here is an example of the else-if syntax. This shows you the syntax for combining the else-if with an else statement. To be consistent, you should always use curly brackets for readability, even though you do not need them if you have only one if statement. For readability, you should properly indent your code inside the if statement. See the items in red? You do not want a code like this. You want to indent correctly as shown in the middle code example. Right here. If statements contain one or more conditions, this condition syntax shows the left operand, a conditional operator, and the right operand. The operand can be a hard-coded value, a variable, a constant, or a function. Here are the 6 conditional operators. Usually an expression compares a value in a variable to another value or another variable. See the example of the price validation? See the example of the larger value comparison. You can check for multiple conditions using the AND or the OR. The symbol for the logical OR operator is right above the enter key on most keyboards, as shown in this picture here. You press the Shift key and the backslash key, and you should get a vertical pipe character to display. Test that out by using Notepad or Microsoft Word. The vertical pipe symbol is supposed to have a gap in the middle so that it looks like 2 dashes rotated 90 degrees. Here's the syntax for linking conditions inside an expression. Here is an example of obtaining user input and sending an error message if the number is not in the range of 1 to 100. See how this is using the OR statement with the 2 pipes? You can refer to the get number example provided in the practice exercises. Be sure to always include 2 sides of a conditional operator for every condition. The first example shows if the result contains true, or 1, the condition will evaluate as true and the expression will evaluate as true. Do not do this. Instead, refer to the bottom example with the equality operator since it's easier to read. This example shows you a common mistake of using the single equal sign instead of the double equal sign to check a condition. In this example, it will assign true to the result variable. In this class, you must apply both sides of a condition. Companies want programmers to write code that's easy to read. That's part of what you're learning to do in this course. Nested ifs can be used when you have 3 or more conditions in a single expression. This is an example of 3 conditions in a single expression. The top example shows one line with 3 conditions. And the bottom example is much easier to read and follow when it's written as nested ifs. You should avoid the use of the logical not operator because it's easy to miss. For this class, you should check for the false condition as shown in the bottom example. The switch statement allows a variable to be tested for equality against a list of values. Each value is called a case, and the variable being switched on is checked for each case. When a break statement is reached, the switch terminates, and the flow of control jumps to the next line following the switch statement. See the example here. Let's look at this code sample since it makes the switch statement easier to understand. In this case, the user has the option to select A for breakfast, B for lunch, and C for dinner. When the variable being switched on is equal to a case, the statements following that case will execute until a break statement is reached. If the user enters C, the user menu choice is C, and the do dinner method executes in this example. If the user enters an X, default logic will execute and send the user the invalid choice error message. Here's another example that allows the user to enter A, B, C, and upper and lowercase. This brings up another point. If you want the user to have the ability to enter the value in any case, you can use the character to uppercase method to convert the input to uppercase. This method returns the uppercase equivalent of the character, if any, otherwise it returns the character itself. Refer to the switch example in your practice exercises to see this in action. The if and switch selection statements transfer the flow of the program to the block of statements based upon whether the condition is true or false. The fundamental difference between if-else and switch statements is that the if-else statement selects the execution of the statements based upon the evaluation of the expression in the if statements. The switch statement selects the execution of the statement based upon a keyboard command. Do not use ASCII values in your if statements. You should refer to the character value since it's easier to read. You can go on the internet and search for ASCII table to find the ASCII value for characters. In this logic, we are checking if the letter is less than 65 and greater than 90. This is really checking for a range between A and Z, uppercase A and uppercase Z. I will show you a better way to do this in the next slide. Use the actual ASCII characters by enclosing the value in single quotes as shown here. This is obvious that we want the user to enter a value from A to Z. Be sure to use the proper spacing in your code by treating the conditional operators, logical operators, and values like words. This means you should include the spacing before and after them for readability. Look at the top example and compare it to the bottom example. The bottom example is easier to read. Do not make your code harder to read than it needs to be. You should make the condition match the assignment to avoid having to mentally swap variables around to compare the code. Refer to the top example of checking if the value is greater than the maximum value. Instead, you should check if the maximum value is less than the value and assign the value to the maximum value if it evaluates as true. You can see this in the bottom example. Let's take a moment to review the questions on this screen. Let's take a moment to review the answers on this screen. To summarize, we covered the if and switch statements and how to use them in Java programming. You can evaluate multiple conditions with an if statement, and the switch is used to evaluate a single expression. You should make your code easy to read by using brackets, indentation, and proper spacing. An operand can be a hard-coded value, a variable, a constant, or a function. Here are the conditional operators as shown on the screen. Logical operators like and or allow you to link multiple conditions together. The logical operator not is easy to miss, so you should avoid using it. The character data type is integer compatible because it stores a value from 0 to 255. Avoid using hard-coded ASCII values in your decision statements. And this concludes our lecture. Thanks, and see you next time.